Well, hello, Patreonuses, or whatever that you're called. The person who comes up with the term for what my Patreon supporters are will receive that I like and incorporate will receive a free mug. How about that? Come up with something. Come up with 5, and if I pick one of yours, you get a mug of your choice. So, welcome to the Bonus MxTRA video for Season 6, Episode 16 that only you get to see, and the handful of others who are my supporters. The main episode. So, as you know, I talked about how the video game music, that was what it was about, and I talked about how music from other genres has incorporated video game music and sounds, but I didn't flesh it out. Why? Because that's what I'm doing here. Some of those genres: synth pop, techno, EDM, hip hop, hyper pop, even rock, even metal. And so in this bonus MXtra, I'm going to talk about genres that were actually invented because of video game music. And there aren't that many. I mean, these are short videos, you know? By the way, if you like my shirt and notice that it is not the shirt I wore in the episode, it's because I'm batch cooking again. And I just finished next week's episode. And this is the t-shirt for that episode. It's on the Kinks. Real pivot there from video game music to the Kinks. And I didn't feel like changing. You know, it's a long day. So enjoy the DIY. So first kind of music that was invented because of video games, chiptune or 8-bit. First wave was in the 70s and 80s, and it was primarily Yellow Magic Orchestra, like I said, and some other bands that incorporated. Many bands of this era were influenced by video game music, but there wasn't a genre dedicated to it at the time. Even Yellow Magic Orchestra went quite a bit beyond that and kind of started before that whole craze happened. So I just mention that because that's sort of the proto of a genre being developed and where a lot of people harken back to when they do music like that today. There was a blip in the late 80s and early 90s of something called bleep techno. So it's a subgenre of techno. And again, it's not something that was invented because of video games. It was just influenced by video games sound-wise, just this little element of the techno world. Pioneers like Format, number 4 MAT, Baroque, TDK, which is neat, Turtle, and Does. And mainly the reason those guys were mentioned, or whoever, because they were already making music for video games and then fleshed it out in the real world with other releases and things like that. But then there was actual bleep techno incorporating the sounds into kind of a minimalist techno style. And some of those artists, Sweet Exorcist, Forge Masters, LFO, which is one I remember, Nightmares on Wax. And those are the big ones, really. As the 90s progressed, DJs and other electronic music producers started incorporating more and more video game type sounds. You could think of Deadmau5 and a bunch of Japanese artists. J-pop in general was heavily influenced by chiptune during the late 80s and 2000s. And then this is when it started to blow up. Whole genres started to rise based strongly on video game music. So starting with the second wave, 8-bit, chiptune, bit pop, micro music. Those are all names for this kind of music. From the late 80s to the early 2000s, you had a record label called 8-Bit Peoples, which is a collective and also a record label formed in 99 specifically for 8-bit, chiptune, bit pop, micro music, whatever you want to call it. And that's because a lot of this was bubbling up. Now, there's quite a bit of crossover between this and another genre I'm going to mention later called Nintendocore, but this skews more electronic, like heavily electronic, and does not rely on the backbone of like live instruments. We'll talk about that in a second. Many of these 8-bit artists also, again, like I mentioned in the real episode, they used actual gaming consoles as part of the music, not just in the studio, but live on stage. Game Boy and the DS and things like that, they'd re-rig to be able to make music live. There were lots of Russian and Japanese bands. Lots and lots of them during this period were 8-bit bands. But some of those bands, some of these, again, Japanese, but a lot of them here in the West. There's a Japanese band, YMCK, which I wonder, YMCA, right? Role Model, Saber Pulse, You Love Her 'Cause She's Dead, Unicorn Kid, Cola Kid, who's a producer from Russia, Pornophonic, but Nique, 8-Bit Weapon, Sasquatch, which I think is my favorite band name maybe ever, Sasquatch, Pop Sky, Chip Zell, Go to 80, which is also a glitch. And you know, I mentioned in the real episode, I incorporate glitch in quite a bit of my music. Watch Out for Snakes and DJ Cutman, and that's just a start. So many 8-bit, bands and things from that period. Probably because at that point it was easy to produce for little to no money, and there was a lot of home, studios, bubbling up at the time. Which brings me to the next one, which is Nintendocore. Nintendocore started in the early 2000s. It was a fusion between chiptune, 8-bit, whatever, and metalcore, which is like hardcore punk mixed with metal, also with some dance punk in there, which would make sense considering the electronic elements. Some of those bands, and this is maybe the only band I remember from that era, but I remember them really well because I think they might have had a minor hit, at least in the indie circuit, which was Crystal Castles. Also because that was one of my favorite video games with the Rolly controller. Horse the band, I Fight Dragons, Math the band, An Albatross, the Neskimos, as in NES, Nintendo Entertainment, the Neskimos, Mini Bosses, excellent name, the Depreciation Guild, the Megas, the Advantage. Now, the Advantage specialized in covers of actual video game songs, which is kind of a neat twist on it. Unicorn Hole. Okay, Polygon Horizon, Got Item, another favorite name of mine, Got Item with an exclamation point, Bondage Fairies, and Anamanaguchi, which is kind of a fun name too. Both the 8-bit chiptune second wave and Nintendocore surged in popularity in the 2000s, fell out of favor by the 2010s, and kind of disappeared for quite a while, but now they're seeing a resurgence in the world primarily because of hyperpop, which if you know 100 Gex or bands like that, or even I think like a proto hyperpop to me is the Barbie Girl song. If you don't know hyperpop, it's super duper fast moving, glitchy, dry electronic sounds that are very reminiscent of video games. And I mentioned hyperpop in the main episode as being like the main thing that is like video gamey these days. And I don't know where it's going because it kind of had its fad, and even 100 Gex has shifted away from it in a lot of ways, but I'm sure it'll be around in some form for who knows how long. What I do love is that some of the 8-bit and Nintendocore bands, whether they're bands who had existed already or brand new ones, are coming back up again, because I think that's a fun sound and it's a fun thing to be a part of as either a musician or a listener. And that's my entire bonus MXtra, just to give you a little taste of what other music is out there and show you how influential video game music has been. If there are bands you know of that heavily incorporated video game music or actually come from one of these genres, let me know. I would love to add them in my catch-up episode in a few weeks. All right? Thank you, and I will see you.